Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dr. Sohail. I'm a psychiatrist, but I practice psychotherapy in my creative psychotherapy clinic. We are having a series of interviews to show how psychotherapy helps people with different kinds of emotional or relationship problems. So today we have invited Shannyn, who for a number of years struggled with PTSD. So we are going to explore how Shannyn got introduced to psychotherapy and how psychotherapy helped her in her personal, in her emotional, in her family, in her social problems, so that people who are watching this program, whether they're students or whether they're doctors or whether they're therapists or psychiatrists or even family members, so that they get an idea how Shannyn's story can inspire and help people to get professional help and how to understand this very complex and mysterious process that we call psychotherapy. So Shannyn, thank you very much for agreeing, and because I think your story and your sharing your story with other people might sort of help them in if they want to get help or if they're one of the dear ones are going to get help. So share with me, when was the first time you saw a psychiatrist or a therapist?
My disclaimer is I'm not very good with dates and time. I find with that is one of the symptoms is so I know I was in my 20s, early 20s around there, and I had seen a psychiatrist for the first time. It wasn't a great experience. The psychiatrist, it was basically I went there because I was having a lot of nightmares, etc., and I was going there because I was feeling depressed, and he basically opened a lot of wounds that I didn't even know I had, and he gave me medicine and sent me on my way. He had asked me to relive as much as I possibly could of the traumatic events that I had gone through, write it down, etc. When that happened, it unlocked a series of other situations and other traumas that I had dealt with. And when I went back to see him, it was, that's great, you're doing good, here, take this medicine, this will make you better, and goodbye. And it was like he left me out in the wild and just to deal with my own wounds, and it actually damaged me further than helped me. And at that point in time, the medication itself even that he had put me on, he had, at that time is the first time that I was diagnosed with PTSD. He said that my PTSD was so severe that the symptoms were like a mood disorder, as though I had bipolar bipolar. And so the medicine he put me on was for bipolar disorder, and it ended up making my dissociation, which I didn't know at the time what that was or anything, a lot worse. I would lose days, I would lose hours, and I wouldn't know who I was or what was going on. So it actually made my dissociation that much worse. And from that moment, when I came back and I had relived the traumatic events that he asked me to relive, and he just said, oh, that's good. And he's like, here, just take these and go. That's when I said no. And I told myself I would never see a psychiatrist ever again. I was done. I said, this is hurting me more than making me better. And at the time I was a single mom and I was worried about my daughter. So it was not a good experience for me the first time I went.
You had once mentioned that you once went to the hospital to see a psychiatrist?
Yes, I did. Just more recent, you mean? Yes, I did see a psychiatrist, and it was a very different setting in itself. At the time, I was feeling very suicidal. I didn't want, when you get to that point that I was at, something that I really want to say. I know a lot of people that don't understand suicide, and they find that it's a very selfish thing. In regards to where I was, because of my children, I felt so low that I was a burden to my children. And if I'm not there, then they're going to have a happier life. I know that that's not the right way of thinking, but when you are at that point and you're that low, that's how you feel. But at the same time, they're the ones that keep me alive. They're the ones that keep me here, and that's why I went to the hospital in the first place, because I really didn't want to leave them, even though I knew that it would. It's like I was at a dissonance, and but that situation, it was better than normal, or the last one rather. He listened to how I was feeling, and so it was a little bit more therapeutic than I would say the first situation, but it was just fast. It was so quick, and but the only problem that I was frustrated with is that I really needed something, and then he was like, "Oh, just go back home." And I was like, okay. So I know that, and then he also prescribed me medicine, and I've tried medicine, and I've done a few different ones, and he had prescribed me, but I find that the psychotherapy way, even though it's a slower pace, it has actually healed me in the long run compared to the medication.
Did he give you any diagnosis?
PTSD. Oh, yeah. I'm trying to remember now. Definitely PTSD, dissociative disorder. What else was there?
Any personality things?
It was more the dissociative, dealing with the personality. It's not really a split personality, but when I do dissociate, I am in a different mindset.
Sure.
So even though I might be here speaking with you, my brain is somewhere else, and it brings me back. So I know it was a dissociative disorder that he had prescribed or rather diagnosed me with. Sorry, yes. But there was multiple things really, this depression and etc. But I can't remember. It was a long list, but yeah.
So how did you come to our clinic?
I'm trying to remember when we were talking earlier. I can't remember exactly the events that led up to it, but I did go to Ontario Shores in Whitby to get assessed. Again, my nightmares were really, really bad, and I had more trauma that was affecting me. And I went to the Ontario Shores, and I spoke with a psychologist there, and it was like a 1 or 2 hour interview, and excuse me, it was a 1 or 2 hour interview that I went through, and he had diagnosed me with severe PTSD and borderline personality disorder. That's the doctor that mentioned about borderline personality disorder, and he agreed. He said, "There's no way I can work. It's too severe for me to be able to go to work." So he asked me to look into going for it's like a 6-month program for borderline personality disorder, and at the same time go to the doctor and find a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Somebody I knew also went through the borderline personality disorder. I guess it was an outpatient program, and she had said she had seen you, and she said, "Well, why don't you take the number? He's fantastic. He's helped me, and see if he can help you." So then I just went to my doctor and asked for the referral, and then I talked to Bette Davis on the phone, and I remember she said she didn't know how she knew, listening to what I've gone through, she didn't know if. She really didn't know if I'd keep going. And she's like, I remember her telling me, she's like, the severity and the amount of traumas that I've been through, she didn't know that if I would be strong enough or ready to be able to do psychotherapy. But thankfully I'm still here. But
Good. So let's explore a little bit of your PTSD. So maybe I'll talk to the audience that you see, PTSD is an abbreviation for post-traumatic stress disorder. People who have a number of one or more than one traumas in the past that they cannot really deal with that. So for you, if you have to sort of reflect on your past, what will be a couple of traumas that you think really affected you at a very deeper level?
Uh, hmm. So the very first trauma that I experienced, my mind suppressed it for years, but it did affect me. I witnessed a murder of a child when I was also a child. They went to the same school as me, and seeing that, I think it was a little too much for my brain, and it suppressed those memories. Seeing that in person, it's definitely affected me. That was one, and it affected me. I went from being a straight A student to failing, and I wasn't comfortable in my own skin because it was a racial situation. And
Roughly how old were you?
I would have been 10. I believe I was 10 when I witnessed
And
it.
how old was the child that was murdered?
I don't know for sure. I saw him in the hallways. I didn't know him personally, but I would say that he was around 8. Like, he was a little bit younger than me, but yeah.
And what was the racial part into it?
It was actually a KKK ceremony, and it was there was multiple people in their KKK garb, and they ended up hanging him from a noose. And I walked into it. My friends and I were just playing hide and seek in the dark, I forget, manhunt, and we happened to stumble across it. There was the burning cross. There was it was multiple people. I learned new things about the Ku Klux Klan at the time, and I froze. I actually wrote a poem about it at the time about it. But
so the child was black.
Yes, he was.
And the people who were killing them were the white.
Yeah. Exactly. And for me, because I had lived in the islands, I lived in a predominantly black area, I didn't know what racism really was. I was pretty much family to black people, and I became very close. So when I saw something like that, I know that it really affected me, and it changed my perspective and my perception of life in general and who I was. So, but that was my first traumatic event.
And was that important for you, that what race you belonged, or did not matter?
It did. I went, because after that, because like I said, I suppressed those memories, but for years I would have a same reoccurring nightmare, and I'd always see a black child. I didn't see it and being murdered and crying, and I'd see fire, and I couldn't understand it. And I really I guess that's the word I'm looking for. I felt like maybe I was black in another. I felt crazy, to be honest. I just thought I was nuts. Like, I just, like, because I felt like I was black in another lifetime or something. I didn't understand why when I would watch movies about back in the day in the United States. I couldn't understand why I felt so deeply for them, and I would cry, and it felt like they were a part of me. And when I spent a lot of time with white people of my own race, I felt uncomfortable. I never felt comfortable. So I think that's how it affected me more than anything. I felt more comfortable around West Indian people, because that's where I had lived right before North Carolina. So I did feel a lot more comfortable. And when I looked at myself, I started to hate myself, and I couldn't understand why. And I would, even when it came to being attracted to men, I was never attracted to a white man, and I couldn't understand why. They disgusted me, and I really felt crazy because I was like, why am I feeling this way? So that's the symptoms before it had opened up and came into my brain. That's how I was feeling for a few years as a teenager.
In what cities had you lived as a child? Where did you grow up?
All over. I think I've counted 29 places. So generally, it was started in Canada. I was born in Canada. I went from Canada to Grenada, and I've lived in Mount Airies and Grenada, Penmentaw, and just different towns in Grenada. And then I ended up moving to North Carolina, and it was around Mebane, that area, that I had lived, and then moved back up to Canada, and then I've moved all over Ontario, the city, and back to the country. And but yeah.
So that was one major trauma that you had repressed for a number of years.
Yes, repressed. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
What was other trauma that you felt affected
me? When I was around 16 years old, someone that I should have been able to trust, they attacked me sexually, and they took my childhood away. That was probably the beginning of my self-confidence starting to go down. That's where I feel like my boundaries were really taken away from me, and I couldn't do anything really. It happened at night, and I ended up generally, so we were all camping, and I was with a group of people, and they were drinking, and they were young as well, and they pushed me down, and they took advantage of me and attacked me, and I pushed them off, and I told somebody, but then what happened was they didn't really believe me. They told somebody else, and we were all young, we were teenagers, and they happened to tell someone that liked this person, and so then it ended up that 10-15 people that I referred to as friends all turned their backs on me, and they said that I put myself in that situation. I was a liar, and many words to do with being
so rather
sexual.
Than sympathetic, they blamed you.
Yes, definitely.
So did you feel betrayed?
Very.
Very
Alone. And then the way that they treated me made me feel like it was my fault, when now through psychotherapy I've learned it had nothing to do with me. I went to the washroom, I was camping, went to the washroom, on my way back he came up behind me and attacked me. But at the time, because of people that were supposed to be friends, I was supposed to trust them, they all turned their backs on me, and I was left out in the dark. And that was probably the second trauma that and that had a domino effect, I find, in regards to how I felt about myself and what worth I had as a woman. So that's when that started.
And what was the third trauma in which you were in a relationship?
So I had met somebody. I was dating. Because of what had happened, I pushed people away. So I had dated, but for a very short time, and I felt like it was just for sex, and I kept pushing people away. So I had met somebody through a boyfriend at the time, and I had broken up with the boyfriend at the time, and then I started dating this person. At this point in time, I had already left home. I wasn't close with my family at all. I had chosen a different lifestyle than what they agreed with, and I didn't have many friends. So at this point in time, I didn't feel comfortable talking to them when I needed help. So after my very first date with this person, he brought me back to his place, and at that time, it's hard for me to explain that, because I feel that it was wrong of me to just go back after the first day. So I don't like explaining that really, because I know what I did was not the right thing. I did go back to his place, and I wasn't allowed to leave. He locked me in his play in his room, and it happened to be that the room had a bathroom. It was the master bedroom. He lived with multiple men. He was a refugee claimant, and so were the rest of them. And they heard me, but he kept saying that it was his ex-girlfriend, and that she's just crazy. Don't worry about it. And but it was okay at the very beginning to a certain extent, but then he started to choke me and rape me and tell me if I say anything, he's going to kill me. And he kept me in there because I was terrified. He would strangle me and he would abuse me while he sexually attacked me. And so I was there for, like I said, I'm not good with time, but at least a couple of months. He would feed me a soup a day. It was like, I think from Country Style or Coffee Time. It was this little soup every day. I lost a lot of weight. And I always knew it was Sundays, because Sundays I'd get eggs. I was like, okay, today's Sunday. Because he would bring eggs into the room. And the people that also lived there, they knew something was up. He opened the door and somebody saw me, and they saw that it wasn't his ex-girlfriend, and there was a huge fight broke out. They didn't speak English. And so I didn't know exactly what was being said. But this friend of his started freaking out, and he's like, what are you doing? Who is that? What's going on? But because of their status in Canada, they were afraid to do anything. They didn't want to bring any attention to themselves because they weren't here as Canadian citizens yet. But when the person that I was with left, say for work, that's when his friend came and he would talk to me through the door. And he ended up picking the lock, and he said, and I was too scared to do anything by this time, and he said, you need to get out. He said, I know him, and he's been drinking, and he's been smoking, and he will kill you. He said, you have to get out, and I'll do what I can to help you. Sorry. So he explained to me, he said he had an ex back home in Africa, and that's how he knows that he will, because he's not in his right mind. He says he doesn't know what love really is, and he takes me as a possession rather than caring for me. And he ended up taking this person and attacking her in public, and people tried to stop him. He threw her over his shoulder and ran away with her and left her for dead. And she didn't, but he ended up going to jail. But I didn't know any of these things. But he said he will do what he can. He said he scared himself because of his situation. He said, but he would do what he can. And then my ex found out about it, and he wouldn't let him back in the room. And it got to the point where I actually, within a couple of days, I ended up jumping out the window, because there was a window in the room. I jumped out the window and I wrecked my ankle and stuff. And I walked to, it was a pizza place, just to use a phone to call somebody that was a friend. And so that was the beginning of that relationship. From there, I ended up going to a shelter. And but to get to the shelter, my friend ended up coming, and then she came with me. He ran after us, and he went from the west end of Toronto all the way to Scarborough, begging me and pleading me, don't leave, I love you, and all this. And it was an interesting situation, to say the least. But from that moment, I stayed with my friend for just a short period of time. They were on assistance at the time and couldn't stay for long, and I ended up going to a shelter. While I was at the shelter, that's where I found out that I was pregnant, and they had said that I needed to have an abortion because of the abuse. My child inside had died, and I was against that. But I did make the appointment for the abortion, and I didn't feel good about it. I felt very bad about it. It came to the day of that when I was supposed to go, And I said, no. I said, there's something going on. I felt, she wasn't really moving much, but I felt something was different, and I canceled. I didn't go that day. I went to another person, and I found out she was alive, and she was happy. She was a happy baby. She had she was perfectly fine. But it still affected me, even to now. The fact that I almost lost her. So, yeah, so that was hard in itself, just knowing that I got that close to losing somebody that's kept me sane all these years, because she's my everything, but was my everything for many years. And yeah, so after that, where was I? So from the shelter, while I was in the shelter, the closest thing I had to parents, she had convinced me that he had found her. My ex had found her. She found out that I was pregnant, and she said, you need to have the father in her life. It doesn't matter what happened before. He has to be in her life. And at the time, I hadn't remembered yet the extremities of what I had gone through. And I was just the only adult that I was close to, and she was like a parent to me. She was like, no, you need to call him back. He's apologizing and he's calling. You need to call him back. So I ended up, I say now foolishly, hindsight's 20, hindsight, right? But I did end up calling him. I ended up getting a place out in the Pickering area, and we ended up getting back together. Myself for that, but so we ended up getting back together. He apologized. He was great for a while. He ended up meeting my family. He ended up working for my father, and he was the nicest person you'll ever meet. He was a very, very good human being on the outside. I always explain, there was this one time we had taken the GO bus, and the bus driver, he gave $10 too much change. And my ex-husband at the time, yes, I ended up marrying him, but he waited outside in the rain for an hour for that exact same bus driver to come back to give him that $10. So that's the kind of person that people knew him as. That's the kind of person my parents knew him as a wonderful person. Behind closed doors, it was a different story. So people didn't believe me. When I finally did speak out, they were like, okay. They did not believe what he was doing, what he was capable of. He again started to, and then at the time I was young still, and we ended up getting married. I forgot to bring that part in, but we did end up getting married. My daughter was a few months old when we got married, and yeah, I can't remember exactly, but sorry, again, my memories, but when we were together, and because I was young, I was married young, and in my mind, and as he would say, I was his wife, and I need to have sex with him whenever he wants. Again, he would strangle me, and he would abuse me, and I would literally just lie there, and it was just continuous, no matter what. Even before we were married, after I had my daughter, I had a C-section, and he still would have sex with me, and I had to go back to the hospital because of my incisions, and so it was like that for a while. By that time, because of all the other things that had happened, I didn't care about myself at all. I felt like I wasn't important. This is what has happened to me in the past. This is what I'm here for. I'm just, that's all I was worth. It got to the point where I started to babysit someone's daughter, and when I went out, he would be, where are you going? Who are you talking to? And he started to, from a distance, he would watch me. And even I was at a bus stop, and I asked a gentleman beside me what time it was. When I came home, who were you talking to? what? At the bus stop.
She was very jealous.
Extremely. And I just asked somebody the time. Like, I was like, what? And he would watch me. And he went to the point where I would go to the Scarborough Town Center and he would follow me. And then when I got home, he says, where were you at Scarborough? And I'd be bringing groceries home, or I'd bring whatever. I brought like paintings or something from Walmart. And he's like, I went there and you weren't there. And he would follow me everywhere. And I'm like, as you can tell, this is where I was. This is the receipt. So he got to that point where he was just extremely jealous, thinking that I was cheating on him and that. And the abuse continued. It got to the point one night... he was out of sorts, and he was positive that I was cheating on him and that I was going to leave him. And he ended up getting a knife, and he came after me, and he put it up to my throat, and he said, you're not leaving me. You're not going to be with somebody else. And if this is what I have to do, this is what I have to do. And I didn't do anything at that point. I was ready to go. And he said, well, he's like, better yet, he's like, I can't do this. I'm not going to. So then he put the knife to himself. And I hadn't moved. I was in the bedroom. I hadn't moved yet. And he just started freaking out, and he wasn't speaking English. And then he ended up going to my daughter's room. When he got to that point, that's when I finally found an inner strength, and I wouldn't let him in that room. And I kicked him. Then I did hit him, and I pushed him out the door, and I shut the door, and I locked it, and he was freaking out, and he had dropped the knife by then, but I ended up kicking him out of the apartment, and still I didn't do as much as I should have. I still, obviously, I'm not better yet. Therapy has helped, but I still have a long ways to go. But he ended up going. I don't know if he would have went to that point, but definitely it affected me and her, because he was, and I ended up calling the superintendent came, and I called my best friend and instead of the cops. So that is how that relationship somewhat ended. I never went back to him, but he was obsessed, and for years to now. And this is my eldest daughter's about 14 now, and so he still comes, sometimes follows me, and he would stalk me and stuff like that. So
I think because it's a very painful story, and there's so many stories within stories. So I just wanted people to have a sense of the traumas, the level, the extent, the intensity of that. So maybe we'll sort of fast forward. I know it's quite painful for you. So let's talk for a few minutes of now you coming to therapy, starting therapy in the clinic. Give me the sort of the experience from the beginning. I think it was like almost 4 years that you have been in therapy.
Right.
So when you started therapy, how you were feeling and what it was like for you to come for individual, I met your children, I met your parents, I met you in the group therapy, there's a combination. So give a sense of from the beginning till now, what it has been for you being part of this therapy.
When I first started, I'm going to quote Bette Davis. She explained how she envisioned me I was anguish. I was just an embodiment of anguish. I was tortured myself. I would torture myself and tortured from my PTSD, etc. And that's exactly what it was. I was disassociating. I was feeling a lot of, I had nightmares, constant nightmares, and I wasn't sleeping, and my flashbacks were affecting me. So when I was triggered, my depression would last a long time. I was very suicidal. the ability to think clearly was very, very, very difficult. And at the time, I was pretty much existing. I wasn't living my life in any way, shape, or form when I first started. Anything that I was living for was for my children. It wasn't for myself. And that's when I first started. I remember my first time in group therapy. To be able to say the stories that I'm saying now, I couldn't get through it. I mean, I fully get through it now without crying, but I could not fully get through it, and it wasn't coherent when I was explaining my stories because my mind was so jumbled up. But I know that throughout the psychotherapy, it wasn't easy at first. It's not an easy process. It's an important process. I find that everything else that I had heard of or done was a band-aid solution. And I was opening wounds, going through the therapy, but having the support system, having the ability to speak about it in a safe place. It was a bit of a slower process, yes, and that's why we like the turtles in your office. But I've been able to actually heal certain parts of my traumas that I could have never done without the therapy.
So because we want to use this sort of interview for people to educate them, give the people who are watching, watch this, if they're not familiar with the idea of dissociation,
Right.
Can you share with them what it is for you when you dissociate and what it is all about?
Yeah. I find I've done research on disassociation, and I find everybody kind of has it in a different way. For myself, there was different stages, I would say, but normally I would lose track of, as I was saying earlier, time, days. People would think that I'm coherent because I'd be talking to them and such, but mentally I was somewhere else. Either I would be in my past, or I just was somewhere else, and I can't tell you where I was at the time. I find that it's like a haze, and there's multiple situations where I remember this one lady told me, I came to your home and we did, and this is what your home looks like, and we played games all day long, and to this day I still don't remember it. There's times that I'll find my phone in the freezer or butter in a closet, and don't understand why, but as through the therapy I've learned that it's because my mind is somewhere else. I could be somewhere in my past, and that's maybe was where the fridge was. I don't know. It's extremely scary. You feel very alone, and you don't think anybody understands what you're going through. You feel like you're going crazy. It's very clouded. So when I remember the first time my family noticed me disassociate, and to them as an outsider, what they had seen is we were all eating a meal together, and something I had watched on TV must have triggered me. And as they explained it, my food dropped. Everything dropped on the floor, and I was kind of catatonic at the time. Like they were trying to wake me up, and my eyes were open and everything. So I find there's different stages when through my dissociative episodes. There's times where I'm out of it, and people notice, and they're like, "Hello, what's going on?" And I'm not there, or I can continue speaking like I am now, and really it's I'm not there mentally. Through the therapeutic process, I've learned with your help and the help of the group how to notice sometimes when I'm kind of going away, but it took time. So I would let people know what it was and explain how that sometimes maybe my eyes will glass over. Sometimes I'll keep talking, but if the information that I'm telling you doesn't make sense or doesn't really match up to the conversation, that you might have to tap me or bring me back to. So yeah, there's multiple things that I've dealt with, but the scariest is just when I lose time completely, and I can't get it back to this day. There's moments, and the scariest for me is when I was a single mom with just my one young one, and she would do things and I wasn't there mentally. So, and then that affected me as a mom as well, because I felt like I was being a bad mom because I couldn't be there. But yeah, it's more of a clouding. Sometimes even there's moments where I'm here and it's like an outer body experience, and I can see myself from the distance, and time is going either slower or it's very hard to explain, but it's not fun. I can sum it up with that. I don't enjoy it, but
How did you feel when I invited your parents for a session, and how was that for you?
I was scared. Just I didn't even know if they would come, to be honest. They're very old school, and the idea of therapy is the stigma is very strong with them. And for my mother especially, one reason she wanted to come, and I don't know if you remember this, but she was just very, put her on meds. Like she was just like, she's been here for a while, nothing's getting better, what's going on? And she really, really wanted me to be on medication, not understanding that that's just a Band-Aid solution. But I am very, very happy that we had them come in, because even though we don't have a very strong relationship, the information coming from a doctor, a professional, explaining to them what I'm dealing with and how the process goes, made a huge impact on our relationship in itself. I know you explained it to them that I have all of this, all of these emotions and all of these traumas, that now that I'm starting to get help, it's like verbal, like vomiting out all of these things, and just using those the metaphors, etc., to give them a visual of what's really happening to me inside. It helped them a lot. They understood when you explained about taking the Band-Aid, and there's many wounds that you were cutting down, and it's going to take time. It helped a lot. It didn't help fully, because she still wants it to get better, but it definitely was a very good experience, and I'm very grateful that this therapy brings in those, because as you've taught me, it's not just me that is going through the therapy or getting the help or etc. It's a family and friends, because they're there with me. So that was very good.
And how did you feel when I invited your daughters?
It was good. It was nice, and it was them being able to see that I am doing something for myself to get better. It made an impact on them as well. I think it strengthened them, seeing that mom is doing something to get better, and they saw when it got really bad, and they saw and have seen rather as time is going on. But they love coming. I know my youngest, she really enjoys coming, and she loves all the turtles, and there's even a picture now on the billboard. She had drawn a turtle for you and stuff like that, so it's nice. And I know we do the turtle library, so she enjoys coming, and because there's so many turtles, and so she's like, whoa. And she goes in and she takes one turtle and takes it home, and even my oldest one has done that too, just because she's like, oh man, those are cool. And then when I come back, they'll switch, and it's like a turtle library. So they really do like it. And what helped a lot too is learning the green zone living, being able to establish that in the family life at home, teaching my girls. I don't have to do it as much now, but when I'm really in a red zone, I'll tell them, I'll be like, I'm in a red zone, and they'll know, okay, mom needs some time, kind of thing. So it's such a huge change, but it's so simple. The green, yellow, red, and I use that a lot, especially when therapy first started, and with the girls, just knowing, okay, red means stop. And green, mom's in a good mood, and or if I'm getting there, like I'm in the yellow, I'm just letting you know, and just being able to talk to them, being able to explain to them more than before, because before therapy I was just everything was inside shut completely, and it's made our life a lot happier, being able to express and understand mom in the way mom is dealing with things, and that it's okay, that things are going to be okay. But
so now let's fast forward to the present, that after all this therapy, if you had to assess yourself out of 10, where were you when you first came to our clinic, and out of 10, and where would you put yourself now?
Honestly, and I've said it before, I was a negative 5 at least. I was very, very bad. I saw no way out when I first started, and literally I just stayed around for my girls, and but throughout, definitely up and down. I would be a 3, and then some days I'd be a 7, and I'd go up and down, and I think that is the process, right? There's times where my PTSD and my flashbacks got really bad, and I was triggered really bad, and I'd go back down to I never really went down to a complete 0. I would always say throughout I'd be around a 2 at the lowest, but now throughout therapy I definitely say I'm on a regular plane. I still go up and down, but I can be around 8, 9. There's day I know I still want to get up to a 10, but I am a lot happier than I was. I do go down, especially when I am still triggered, and I'm still learning how to deal with those things. I don't know if that will ever go away, just because there's so many triggers. But I definitely would say that I'm a lot better than I have been. And if I do go down, I go back to maybe a 3. I'm never in the negatives anymore. So,
how has your self-image, self-confidence, self-perception changed over the years?
Huge. I can wear this colored lipstick. The person I was before, I wouldn't dress up. I wouldn't wear makeup. I would be always in baggy clothes, and I'd be very down. I'd still always try, and there'd be days that I would be like, yeah, and I would try to convince myself, for my girls especially. And as time went on, I always convinced I loved my curves, etc., etc. But I did get to a point where I was very overweight, and it was very unhealthy for me. I remember the moment where I really was thinking about needing to lose weight, and that's when my confidence level had gone up. I was able to draw again. I was able to write poems again. And so I went hiking with a group of people, but I was at the time 315 pounds. And at that moment when everybody else was way ahead of me, and I am just drenched in sweat, what killed me the most was my little one wanted to stay behind, and she didn't want to leave me behind. And then I said to myself, no, this isn't healthy. And my daughter can't be enjoying herself with her friends because she's worried about mom. So that's where a big turning point was, when I went hiking at that point in time, and I said no. And then as time's gone on, I think because my confidence level has gotten better, learning that the attacks and what I had seen as a child, etc., learning that wasn't my fault, getting to a point where I can actually start believing that those things weren't my fault. That's where it really turned around. Being able to be in group therapy was huge, and my confidence has been able to get a lot stronger. Just having that safe group of people and being able to say my story over and over again. confidence keeps rising. Having also, I was just going to say, having you being able to say, no, you can do this. And then having goals being set. So yeah, definitely I've been able to see myself in a different light now. Yeah.
How much weight have you lost and in how much time?
I have lost. I was trying to remember. I'm not good at math, so I like art, not math. But yeah, I'm around 185 now, so about 130 pounds, and that was in about a year and a bit, about that, a year and a half, around there. I had started and it wasn't working or whatever, but once I started really going at it and going to the gym and that's when it started to get a lot more. I lost a lot more after that, but yeah, so about 130 pounds so far. Yeah.
How therapy has changed your relationship with your children?
It's a very positive. I know they're much more understanding, and they can see. Before, they didn't know what was wrong with mommy. Something's wrong with mom, but we don't know, because I wouldn't speak, I wouldn't explain, because I couldn't. Everything was locked in. Being open, we have a friendship. Even the person that I'm with now, my boyfriend now, he's like, you're like a friend, like kind of like sisters. You're not as much mom daughter. How is that working for you? I'm just like, I don't know, it's just working. I'm still strict and I still have my rules, but I think being able to share the journey with them is incredible. Them being able to see where I was before and see how strong I am and still becoming. I've even noticed my youngest, who is very affected by my ex-husband. He did a lot of damage to her as well. But I've noticed throughout these last few years, watching my journey, she's become a lot stronger. She's been able to write poetry and be able to get her anger out that way. And she's becoming a stronger person, much stronger than, say, 4 years ago before I started therapy. So I think it's definitely a family thing. It's because I know even she'll be talking about the zones and stuff again, as I said. So definitely, and my little one, she looks up to me, which helps me. So when I like, there was a metaphor, I guess, that Bet had said. It's like, I have my garden and I have this white picket fence, and when the trauma happened, like especially when I was a teenager, when I was attacked, it was like he just bulldozed over my white picket fence and he just destroyed my garden, and those boundaries were ruined. And that's what I say, like, there's people that came in that weren't good because I didn't know, but there was also people that have come in and helped, and I thank those people. And I being able to speak now. Before, I would go months without saying that I'm in pain or going through anything. Now I can speak a lot quicker and be able to deal with it a lot faster. Now, as I was just saying, I'm rebuilding my fence, and there is times when I might drop the wood and it might need a lot more paint, but it's really good, and the girls see that, and they have been watching the ups and the downs, but they've been seeing at least there is slowly, but it is continuously more positive, even though, yes, I do still deal with things, but they can understand it more, which makes me happy, because then if anything ever was to happen to them, or if they know other people, they have the experience and be able to understand it better. So
now, something special. I have not met your sweetheart, but I know that you have fallen in love.
yeah,
How does it feel?
really good. I love him a lot. He to be able to find somebody, a man. I always said, I am a religious person. I do believe in God. And I said, okay, if I can trust in something that I can't see, then maybe I'll start trusting in myself, and then maybe men. Men were very low on the playing field. But to be able to find somebody that I think I'm a different person than I was, and I am able to notice red flags, etc., and to be able to trust somebody means a lot. And so I think that in itself, I know a lot is to do with me being a lot healthier, being able to see where I can put my foot down, no, and where it's okay. It's a struggle. It's a struggle to be able to trust that he does care for me more than for sex. Being gone through multiple rapes, it confuses you, and you feel as though that is, and that's how I felt, as though that's the only reason I'm here in regards to men. That's it. That's why it exist, is for that reason, for that, and my happiness is never going to come from a relationship. To actually have somebody that supports me, so cares for my children, supports my children, and every step when I do have my bad days, and he's like, okay, I know it's probably because of this. He's like, but being able to be patient enough to be there for me when I'm going through hard times, it's huge. It's a really big deal.
And he's also good with your children.
Oh yeah, no, he's fantastic with my kids. My oldest, I was with somebody for quite a few years, not really with, because he has commitment issues, but back and forth, up and down. It wasn't a real good relationship. But that was the only person she knew, my oldest knew, as a father. So she always said, nobody but him. You're not allowed to be with anybody except for that person. And until she met who I'm with now, then she actually was like, oh, okay, so this is how you're supposed to be treated. And they get along well. But him and the little one really get along very well, and he's a kid himself, so he can play with her and stuff like that. And even with my oldest, and she's a little bit more careful, just because of what she's dealt with her father. However, for her to be able to say, no, he treats you really well, Mom, and she respects him. And the fact that she even respects a man, because she was kind of in the same boat as me, watching the things that had happened. So yeah, no, he's very good with them. He's very protective, and very simple things. He just makes sure that they're healthy and they're okay, and so it's nice.
So you can see a future with him now.
Yes. Yeah. I'm hopeful.
Now, as you progressed and got better and healing, part of it was you're expressing yourself creatively with music and with art, and with painting and drawing and poems. Would you like to share a couple of poems that you had written?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So I took a couple of poems. One was before I healed as much as I have, and that's about the little boy that I witnessed that murder. So this is very low, but I know that without therapy I wouldn't have been able to reach down and be able to find the inner strength to even write this. And so this was a very important poem for me. So I will read that one first. It says, the flames, the tears, the fear, the horror, the pain. I don't want to be here. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. I stood frozen in time. I'm sorry. I don't want to be here. I was so scared. I am so scared. This little girl inside of me just can't let go. She wishes she did something. What? I don't know. All I know is I don't want to be here. Is this reality or a sick dream? I can't breathe. I can't sleep. I just want to scream. What kind of world do we live in? They only took you because of the color of your skin. I watched silently as your life was taken away. I did nothing. I regret it every day. I sit here shivering, teeth chattering, body shaking. Please, someone, take me away. I don't want to be here. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. I stood frozen in time. I'm sorry. I don't deserve to be here. So I was very low at that time. And I truly felt that way. And I know throughout the therapy, I did hit suicidal points. And this was one of them. But, and I don't know to show you, it's like I just had this is kind of the face the dream that I kept revisiting always in my mind. But through therapy, this is a huge part of what I am thankful for. Is I was, after writing this, as you know, I was able to go back to this location, not the exact location where this happened, but to go back to, I wouldn't before, I couldn't go back there, but being able to face that fear and go back to that same place, it wasn't easy at first, but it ended up, there was a wedding, and like I said to you, I don't know if I wanted to go. I was kind of scared, and but I did return, and I was able to face that fear, and it was because of the therapy, being able to let all of this out. And I am very thankful because I had a really good time. It was a fantastic time. I saw old friends, and now when I think of back home, when I think of being there, I can be happy about it rather than sad. And I know that it wasn't my fault. I know that I was only a year older than the child. I know now that there wasn't anything that I could do, and my brain decided to repress it anyways. But yeah, so that was the one that I had written, and I'm very thankful to the therapy to be able to have expressed that and be able to face that. The other one that I had written, so this was at least a year or so after. Being a single mom, I hadn't gone anywhere. You and Bet was it, you need a vacation, like just for my creativity, and it was true. Like without going away, I couldn't do anything creative. I couldn't draw. I couldn't anything like that. And this was my first time away from my daughter. I'd never been away from. I've been with my 24/7. She was 12 at the time, so yeah, 24/7. Until 12 years old. This was my first time actually going away, and I went up to Blue Mountain, and I went for almost a week. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was the best thing I've ever done, but it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I was sick when I was leaving, and it was just terrible. But doing that is exactly, you guys know what you're talking about, and I was able to clear my mind and be able to be a stronger person. So this was called my self-realization vacation. I am worthless, ugly, disgusting, and fat. I'm an idiot, a fool. Let's just add incompetent to that. I am all these things and so much more. Well, at least I always thought so until I opened that door. That door to self-realization, it's been slammed shut for so long. I've been floating through life not knowing where I belong. My past crippled me, blinded me from the truth. It took away my serenity, sanity, and my youth. Then the light dawned on me, a moment of clarity. Wow, I am an incomparable rarity. I am sexy, beautiful, strong, and unique. I am magnetic, artistic, and a thrill I will always seek. In a room full of femininity, I am the smile, the eyes, the hair, and the thighs that drew the attention of the room's masculinity. All those lies, I thought they were true. They were myths, false perceptions, because of the things I had gone through. I am loving and caring, and I always will be. The truth is, they always loved, wanted, and appreciated me. It's so refreshing to finally see the life and the colors that danced through me. All my past had painted me black. From this time on, I promise to bring my vibrancy back. So, and reading that, I just want to bring out the part where I had said, a thrill I will always seek. My weight loss goals were not, I want to get to this size. I've never been that person. I've always said, okay, I like my curves, etc., whatever. I couldn't put a number on it. It was, I want to be able to do the things that I want to go rafting and hiking and zip lining. I want to do the things that I wanted to do or I had done in the past. That thing. I love Canada's Wonderland more than anything. I love the rides and the roller coaster, and I hadn't been on them for so long. And one of the big things was losing enough weight. That was my goal. That was my first goal. I think the goal was like 225. You have to be at least 225 pounds or no more than that for whatever. So I said, that's my goal. It was a number, but it was more, I want to be able to go on any ride I want. So I ended up going, and I ended up being able to go on the biggest of them all. And I did it a few times, and it was exciting. But what I really was happy about was, I don't know if you know, in Canada's Wonderland, there's this thing called the Extreme Flyer. It's like bungee jumping. And I've always wanted to do it, and I did it. And that was just recent. And my boyfriend, he was able to witness that. He was terrified. He didn't. He's like, "Oh my God, you're gonna die!" But I was able to do it, and that's being able to push myself to do those things now. I'm just really happy about. But yeah,
good, wonderful, very powerful poem. You have some drawings here. There's something you draw. Maybe you can show them to the camera, and then we can capture that.
So this was more recent. Yeah, I started drawing again. This is just. I was walking down one of my favorite places for me to be able to relax and be able to think is at the lake. And there was this man walking around with this macaw. I think her name was Jojo or something. And he was walking around with her. And I ended up taking a picture of her because she was beautiful. And I love color. And you wouldn't know because I sketch, but that's okay. But yeah, so this was, or Maxine. Her name was Maxine. I think his name was Joe or something. But this is Maxine. So I ended up drawing her. And I went camping. And that's another thing. I keep trying to push myself because the very first time that anything traumatic happened, well, other than when I was a little girl, but the attack was when I was camping. So I ended up going camping, and the first time I went was not easy. I don't know if you remember, I had nightmares because it was horrible the very, very first time. And then again, I kept pushing myself. So I went again, and I had drawn. I was just sketching while I was sitting at the fire, and I was just kind of sketching.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I think that was pretty much. I'll show this one just because my girls really like it. But this is just when I was feeling kind of low, so that's why. But my girls like. I think it's good. It's a butterfly, but it's just. I just doodle now. Yeah. But being able to do that again is huge. And I have a picture, but I gave of my boyfriend, but I gave it to him, so I couldn't bring it. But yeah, no, it's just really nice to be able to be creative again. But.
So now that we are coming to the end of our interview, I'm wondering, for other people who are struggling with emotional problems, and especially young women who have gone through some trauma or some abuse or what will be sort of your suggestion or advice to those young people or young women? What would you say to them?
I just truly believe that every woman is a superwoman, and no matter what you've been through, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be healthy. Your story isn't done yet. Find somebody, talk. There's such a stigma when it comes to mental health, and especially if you're feeling or you do have, say, PTSD, it's not your fault. The things happened to you, and not to give up. That's my biggest thing. Not to give up. That people do love you very, very much, and you might not know it, but people do care about you. And for me, what may help others is I had to live for other people first because I was so low. I had to live for my children. So if you do have kids, if you have someone that you do care about, even if to get healthy for them, if that's what you need to do first, then do that. I know everyone, oh no, you should be doing it for yourself. If you're as low as I got, the only thing that kept me alive were my children. And I love them. And now I have 3 people to live for. I have who I'm with now. And those are the outside. But to get to the point, and they can get to the point where you live for yourself and you love yourself. And it is possible. That's why I want women to know that no matter what people might have done to you, it is possible to love yourself. And even if you have to start doing your process by doing it for other people first, then that's what you got to do. You just do what you have to, but definitely talk to somebody. If you need to call a helpline, if you need to talk to a doctor, don't allow yourself to keep it all in. I did it for years and years and years and years. But now that I haven't, I'm happier, and I'm living a life with my children, with somebody that loves me in return, and I can trust him. And it's possible for anybody. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me share some of my thoughts, because I think I've seen you grow, and I've seen you heal, and I've seen you create. I think Betty was right when you first came. Your story was so overwhelming, and even when you were sharing with the group, you could hardly. It was almost as if you were stuttering or stammering, and you were crying, and like you couldn't complete the story, you couldn't finish. So there were so many painful events, traumas, tragedies, crises, your betrayal, your mistrust, the people that you trusted, So it was like the jigsaw puzzle was all broken. Like you had these pieces, but they were. So it was very impressive to see you, how you put the pieces together. And I think the group was very supportive to you. But I think you also gave back a lot instead of. So there was. In spite of your trauma and hurt and pain, I was always sort of struck that you still smiled and you were still affectionate. And maybe it was your mothering that you were doing with your children, that you were always, even with the group, you were very sort of honest, you were candid, you were sincere, you were transparent, and the group connected with you, and and you connected with them. Yeah, I think meeting your parents was interesting thing for me. I knew that your mom was more like more of a strict kind of a matter of fact person, but I tried to explain to her what you struggled, and and I think she was a little more gentler, a little more softer. And with your children, I think your kids came and they were connected with the group, sort of with the clinic, and with all these turtles and all that. So I think for you to grow, for you to heal, for you to sort of come a long way, I thought that you have been inspiration for the group members. That I think with a process like this, now people who will watch this, I think that could be a very inspiring for them, and you are sort of sharing that story. And I saw you share today. I don't think 2 or 3 or 4 years ago you could articulate or you could share that. So even the session today, as much as it is to help others, I thought it might even be therapeutic for you to heal. And you have been sharing bits and pieces of your story. I wanted you to share in as a whole, as a holistic sort of story, and I think it would be therapeutic for you, it will be healing for you, and also a very educational thing for many others. So before we finish, is anything last thing you want to say before we finish it today? Anything?
No, not really. I enjoyed this, and I thank you for doing this. And if I can inspire anybody, that's turning my lemons into lemonade. So I'm very happy to be able to do this, and I thank you for the opportunity. And I know there's still a lot of other things that I've dealt with that we didn't touch on, but it's so much. So just the fact that if I can get through it, I know other people can get through it. But yeah, so thank you very much.
Thanks.